Do you know that we literally have a child prodigy with us today? And her name is Helga Hulse. At age 90, still a prodigy in my mind. You know that at age 6, she studied piano at the Chicago Musical College. At age 11, she was piano soloist with the Honolulu Symphony Orchestra, playing the D minor Mozart Piano Concerto at age 11. You know that she was raised in Honolulu in Hawaii. At age 13, she was accepted into the prestigious Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia, age 13. At age 15, she was accepted into the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music. And at age 18, Helga played with the Los Angeles Symphony Orchestra. That's just a few things that she did as in growing up there. So. We also want to thank the Association of Piano Teachers for sponsoring the reception that will take place immediately following the recital down at the Jamestown First Baptist Church at 358 East 5th Street, and welcome one and all to that. And so now, without further ado, it is my honor and distinct pleasure to welcome back to this stage our dear friend, musician extraordinaire, and featured piano artist, Helga Hulse. Let's give her a rousing applause.
About my recent experience. So I asked Brian to please put up my music because I'm really not quite put together yet after making a lot of noise on the door. I used a lot of different rhythms too, so people wouldn't know it was just an ordinary sound, you know. Dotted rhythms, you know, music we have 11 rhythms for scales and arpeggi. And I used all of those. First of all, greetings to you. A very great greeting to the gentlemen to whom I wish a very happy Father's Day. And I hope this occasion adds joy to the wonderful day of Father's Day to you. This is a Piano Teacher's Day Off. I have wanted to come back to Jamestown. I've been very homesick for Jamestown. And one of my most great memories of this wonderful area is the piano before you. A gem, a supreme, an absolutely unexcelled instrument of the 60s, Mr. Briggs told me. It is, my dream was to be able to play it once more. And Mr. Bogey has made that possible. And the occasion is a music teacher wanting to revel in the actual playing. Even though teaching and playing are two different abilities, you might say, I think the teacher needs to go back and play and renew his batteries, as it were, and he knows what his students are going through. The first three little preludes that I might have to use my music for, simply because I'm not down to the earth yet, are extrapolated. Yes, indeedy. I took them from the Well-Tempered Clavichord Book 1, just the preludes. And I am going to add to it eventually and have some group of preludes and then have a group of fugues. And why is this? Because if we hear several preludes at one time, we become immersed in them and we begin to become acquainted with the prelude. And the same for the fugue. they're short pieces, and Bach has written them prelude, fugue. So the interest skips over to the fugue and skips over to the prelude. Now, a traditionalist may think this is a very naughty thing to do. However, an object of beauty can be examined in all kinds of ways. We can adventure into different listening modes and experience a new appreciation of this great man's writings. And therefore, I will play the three preludes right now. The next group, I have memorized the two Brahms pieces that are following. There's a little background. Am I making it clear on this microphone? I practice in a closet, a clothes closet, and because I live in an apartment, I have night sleepers on one side and day sleepers on the other side, which is a little difficult for pianists to decide where to function. So I play very softly on my 1896 Steinway, very beautiful upright, but it's jammed in there. And I worked on these two Brahms pieces that are two of my very favorite works. Oh my, they're gorgeous. Introduced in this program. Both works are in musical terms ABA. Now in just a layman's language, that means beginning, middle, and end. But in music we have form symbols. It's nice to pass this on to someone else you speak with, and you could find a common ground for this explanation of ABA form in music. And I was just thinking a good common ground could be dining out. Everybody knows about dining out, and that's a good common ground if you're going to explain something. And for the eager listener, at your command, would think ABA would stand for soup, entree, and dessert. But you would be in a position to explain that in musical terms, it is soup, entree, and soup. So that's what we have. And my page turner, Miss Ruth Schreck, has consented to turn for me because I still don't know what happened in the closet. have the works in my library at home. He wrote a cello sonata. I have never heard. Has anybody heard his cello sonata? Has anybody heard his chamber music? He's written several works, including a piano trio. He's written a 2 piano work I have never heard. And most of all, he wrote a volume, Opus 74, of very beautiful vocal pieces. At my age now, I came along at the renaissance of the concert stage. I've heard Tito Schipa, Lawrence Tibbett, amongst others. I even heard Nelson Eddy, the movie star, who was classically trained, give a German lieder vocal concert at the Los Angeles Philharmonic Auditorium with a nifty accompanist. Very, very fine vocalist. I've heard Grace Moore, Lily Pons, Kirsten Flagstad, Helen Traubel, Kathleen Battle. I can go on, and not once have I heard a Chopin vocal composition. There are quite a few. Now, one called The Maiden's Wish was transcribed by Liszt for a piano solo. And it's amazing to me that such a great, really impeccable composer has not had his works heard. So let's do something about it. Let's get busy and make it happen. Opus 74 is available. I have all these works in my library, but I don't play them. I don't sing. I've encouraged vocalists and vocal teachers to use them, but it hasn't happened yet. Well, I hope I have enough together for me now to play the etudes and preludes. They're not all of them, there are a lot of them.
before our intermission today, I think it would be most appropriate to, if we sing happy birthday to Helga on her 90th birthday, even though it was last September 21st. She was unable to join us at that time due to health reasons. And so, well, let's stand up, please. You need to stand.
At this time, I would like to present you, Helga, with the Keyboard Instructors of Greater Jamestown historical book with all your pictures and your programs and all the teachers. And a lot of them are here, and I'm going to ask you to stand, those that belong to the Keyboard Instructors of Greater Jamestown. It was formed in 1982, and there are some of your colleagues out there.
Treasure. You see why I'm homesick for Jamestown? Very much so.
Then you can see all our pictures in there.
Oh, thank you.
And now we'll begin our 10-minute intermission. We'll start it with a free will offering, and we thank you for your generosity, for the piano tunings and for the traveling and everything that Helga has to have done here for this particular program. Thank you so much for your generosity.
It's storybook time, or storyteller time. Up to this point, you've had absolute music that doesn't tell a story, but the Debussy is storybook time. The Dr. Gratis, by the way, is a real mountain, about 8,000 feet in Greece, and it's symbolic of Greek mythology. But let's have a little thought here about a man who listened to this first piece, the Dr. Gratis ad Parnassum, and came up to me afterwards, and I said, "Did you think of your own story?" And he said, "Yes, because Debussy had stories for these, but I think you should make up your own story, don't you?" Yes, you. If it's programmatic music, you have that option to make up your own. And I asked him about his story. He had in this work an aeronautical theme. He was an aviator himself, and so he thought along these lines. And at the very end, when the piano comes down from fairly good height all the way down to the bass notes, he interpreted that as being a parachuter having jumped out of the plane. It was coming down, and he landed. Somehow he may have read the concern on my countenance at that point, and he assured me the pilot landed safely, as far as he could determine. So make up your own stories, and Debussy, and for a little academia, Debussy loved the Lydian and the Mixolydian scales. The Lydian was this, and the Mixolydian so those were his favorite scales. He didn't just stay with that, but they were favorites of his. then if you have a nice story, I'd like to know what it is. I had the very wonderful, unforgettable experience of spending time with Arthur Schnabel, the great Beethoven player of the 20th century. It just worked out that way, and we would take walks together in the cold of Cincinnati with the soot coming down in those days. And he would tell me wonderful things. Yeah, he did all the talking. I was 15 when we did the walks, and 15-year-olds listened in those days and didn't say anything. So I read the full extent of his wisdom. He said one of our walks, you know, people come up to me after a concert and say, Herr Schnabel, what is talent? And he was quite a very, very wonderful conversationalist and a literateur. And he said he had for the last 25, 35 years given the same answer, and it was almost a page full of wonderful descriptions of talent and what its metamorphosing was as one grew older. He had it was just beautiful. And he said, you know, day before yesterday I changed my mind. I don't use that anymore as of day before yesterday. I came down to talent with 2 words. That's all it is, 2 words. The urge. And it really encompasses that wonder of talent. And urge comes in many forms. One learns to recognize it for its value in any form one sees it. For example, I had a lovely little student, 8 years old, Laurie. I never will forget Laurie, talented, I thought, and she lived in the country, just out of Salt Lake City. And I went to her home for the reason that whenever I've started a new studio, I go to the homes for 2 years and then place myself in a definite situation where people come to the studio. And one day I was giving her a lesson in this lovely room with window right there and the many acres they had, and she was playing the Birch Canoe by David Clark Glover, a lovely little Indian overtones in that. And I was paying attention, but all of a sudden I noticed it was raining. And that caught my eye because we were indoors. And I looked out the window, and I didn't see any rain. And I was in the midst of every scientific book I'd ever read came to my mind. How does it rain with no descent? But my job was to keep my eye on that birch canoe. Well, I looked over at Laurie as she came to the final few measures, and it dawned on me, and I said, "Laurie, why didn't you tell me?" And she said, "I just had to finish this piece." That's a form of urge. Then there's the urge that takes more than one person. You have the urgor and the urgee. For instance, the urgor can say, "No food, no water, till you learn the second movement memorized of Opus 110. And so the urgee is very urged to do that. So we have different kinds, but that is it. From Schnabel himself, talent is the urge. Now I have another Debussy number, isn't that right? Yes. have a little academia. The last work on the program has a lot of notes. It has more notes than you can count. And that could be a problem to some of you who wonder how Haydn wrote 110 symphonies. Mahler wrote 9 symphonies. Beethoven wrote 9. Brahms wrote 4. Mozart wrote 27 piano concerti. The 28th is sort of maybe. And look at the works of Bach. You run out of numbers when you look at the repertoire of Bach. Has anybody complained about running out of notes? Not one composer. People are still composing. Well, to put you at ease so you don't worry about that after you hear this next piece, the piano has 7 octaves and 3 keys, as you know. And the calibration, you might say, of how long we can play chords of 10 notes, 1 a second, on a keyboard of 7 octaves and 3 keys, using the astronomical year, not the lunar year. The astronomical year is 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 46 seconds. Using the astronomical year, we have, and I'll read it so I don't say, we have 71,516 years to play chords of 10 notes, 1 a second on this size keyboard. We have used up already, we've used up 179 years out of 71,516. So we still have some left. This next piece won't worry you too much. Yes, indeed. I think that pretty well covers it. Oh, where are we going to start? We can't just say, well, we don't know where to begin. We have to have a beginning. We know where the ending is. It's 71,560 years and all the other, and 17 decimal points. My thought is that we start with Brahms. Make a begin right there, because Brahms was the first master to be born with a full keyboard. The keyboard was increasing, over the years, and it's just too unpredictable in there. But we could start with Brahms. That's my suggestion, and I would like to know where to put it. I don't know to whom I make this suggestion, if it's with Washington or what. But somebody has to put that forth, that this mathematics begins with Brahms. So I say we have used up, with that in mind, we've used up 179 years. Well, here's the last piece, and don't worry. One of my teachers said, don't use that word piece. We have a piece of pie, we don't have a piece of music. And so I apologize, it just comes out.
Look at the flowers. She is, you know.